Recently, our planet's orbit has been the scene of incidents that narrowly missed causing a serious disaster with immeasurable consequences for all of humanity. These events were not properly reported by mainstream media, who underestimated their true relevance and magnitude. So we're here to tell you everything we were able to find out. Among these events is the passing of an asteroid that was closer than expected, and two artificial satellites that nearly collided and collapsed our main means of communication and navigation, and the first military maneuvers in space by the special forces of the United States and China, which indicate that a possible space war may be closer than we expected. Stay with us to understand what's really going on. The first scare was by an asteroid named 2024 GJ2, a chunk of space rock about the size of a car. It was discovered by the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System, better known as PANSTARRS. This device is based in Hawaii, a part of the United States, and its job is to seek out space objects that could pose some threat to Earth. The announcement and tracking of the trajectory of this foreign object was done by ESA, the European Space Agency, and what's most shocking in this case is that it was only discovered 2 days before it whizzed by very close to us. That's because of its size, which isn't so significant when compared to cosmic scales, but still, it serves as a wake-up call to show how much we still need to progress in this area. And this also applies to the precision of the tools we use to make these measurements. The first estimate claimed the asteroid would be approximately 19,000 kilometers from Earth, but it actually came within 12,000 kilometers of us, a distance 30 times closer than the Moon. But I don't want you to get me wrong. Performing such a complex calculation, measuring the distance, speed, and size of an object that is thousands of kilometers away in a nearly infinite and almost entirely dark space, is highly complicated. That's why such a margin of error is negligible. And this feat is indeed quite impressive. However, it's becoming increasingly evident that we need to invest in this type of research and in potential solutions to eliminate threats like these, particularly if we wish to secure our continued existence here for a while longer. In the end, 2024 GJ2 passed us by, and, despite the scare, it continued on its path, traveling at a speed of approximately 52,000 kilometers per hour. It continues to be monitored, but it should not become a threat. It is estimated that it will only approach again between 2048 and 2093, but it should not come closer than 216 kilometers from our surface. If it had crashed here, this asteroid could have caused great damage to the region of its impact, especially if it hit a very populated area like a large city. But he alone did not pose a great threat to humanity, unlike our next case that we are going to present to you now. Today, there are about 11,500 satellites circling our planet, and about 9,000 of them are still active. That number may not seem that big, since we're hearing about them much more often in recent times, but they are multiplying in a more frequent way. Exponential, and this is extremely dangerous, and I'll explain to you why. Since 2019, the number of artificial satellites in orbit has almost quadrupled. Currently, about half of them are from Starlink, the communication company led by Elon Musk, which offers internet services worldwide. The billionaire's plan is to launch at least 40,000 more devices like this to improve his users' connection quality and expand his operations even in Earth's most inhospitable territories. In addition, China plans to deploy another 25,000 satellites to offer a product similar to Starlink's and compete with the American pioneer of this service. There are also other companies from various countries that would like to do the same. Not to mention the other applications of these devices, such as assistance in navigation by GPS, which has allowed Boeing and other aviation companies to get permission to launch their own satellites to aid in their aircraft operations. And we're not even considering the military applications of this equipment. All of this indicates that the projected launch of new satellites over the next few years is approximately 400,000, a number vastly greater than what we currently have. The problem is that this congestion can be extremely dangerous for us because if these devices collide with each other, it could trigger a series of accidents that would put all of our lives at risk. And that's exactly what almost happened. The news was broken to us by former astronaut and NASA Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy during a speech at a symposium held in the American state of Colorado. She mentioned that the event was impressive and frightening, both for her, who has participated in at least 3 space missions, and for the entire agency and international defense agencies that were informed firsthand. NASA has a very important satellite known by the acronym TIMED, which stands for thermosphere, ionosphere, mesosphere, energetic, and dynamic. It is used to measure and analyze various parameters of our atmosphere. That's why its path is constantly monitored by the body in charge of it. It so happens that while agents were doing this tracking, they found out there was another object on a collision course. The Russian spy satellite Cosmos 2221, which has been out of operation for some time already. The big problem is that none of these pieces of machinery has thrusters or any kind of device that allows them to be controlled from Earth. In other words, nothing. Nothing could be done but wait and hope. The calculations made by the experts estimated the satellites would cross paths at a mere 20 meters apart, which, as we have seen, is virtually nothing considering how vast space is. However, this number appears to have been even less, around 10 meters, which is an extraordinarily small distance. At this point, you're probably wondering what could have gone so terribly wrong with the collision of these 2 pieces of equipment. Are these readings of our atmosphere really that important? Indeed they are, but losing our team wouldn't be our biggest problem. We would be really threatened by a phenomenon known as Kessler syndrome, named after a NASA engineer who first talked about it in 1978. Donald J. Kessler predicted that at some point in our history, the density of objects in orbit would be so great that any impact between them could set off a chain reaction that would bring down practically the entire global space infrastructure, including communication and navigation satellites, aircraft, and even the International Space Station and all the other structures used to keep people in orbit. And it doesn't stop there. This collapse would send millions of particles towards Earth at thousands of kilometers per hour, devastating everything in their path, including entire cities, not to mention the environmental impacts that would be generated. It would be much more serious than we can imagine. And speaking of gravity, something similar to this was depicted in the 2013 movie Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. If you've watched it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why NASA has already announced its package of space sustainability strategies. which includes improving the ability to track and monitor particles left in space, as well as outlining plans to remove everything possible to prevent accidents like this from occurring in the near future. Other agencies, such as ESA, have also expressed this concern and are calling for help from other institutions, especially private companies that make use of our orbit to join efforts and make this withdrawal happen as soon as possible. The plans also foresee that the new releases will be made with devices that include a technology capable of altering its path, to make it easier to shift its trajectory, while it's not yet feasible to eliminate all the debris that's scattered out there. Estimates suggest that, besides the 11,500 satellites, we still have over 36,000 pieces of space debris at least 10 centimeters in size and over 130 million smaller fragments. And before you think these don't pose a serious threat to us, any particle flying at 27,000 kilometers per hour can deal severe damage to a spacecraft or satellite, even if it's just the size of a screw. And that's why we need to act as soon as possible. And if dealing with these risks wasn't enough, the United States started to make maneuvers in space that could enable what might be the first and possibly only spacewalk. This kind of initiative first started in 2019, when the first armed force in the world specialized in space matters, the United States Space Force, was announced, which functions as a branch of the existing military fronts, such as the Navy and Army and the Air Force. Initially, this advance was seen as something trivial, mainly because of the symbol of the grouping that looks like a science fiction movie logo. But recent moves have made it clear that it is something serious and that it can become a real threat at any time. This is because China has also made several space forays, which include investment in manned trips to the moon, launching its own space station, and the construction of a telescope that would be even more advanced than the James Webb. In short, it seems we are living in a moment even more heated than the space race of the Cold War. So, the United States began to train and analyze how it would be possible to conduct a conflict in space while verifying the existence of spy satellites or any type of device that could compromise its current dominance. We can only wait for the next chapters, hoping that everything will be resolved peacefully. Until next time.